Have you ever stopped to think about how many times someone has been judged in seconds simply for being in the wrong place, wearing the wrong clothes, or simply for not conforming to the image society expects? Now, imagine this happening in a luxury airport, one of those where time seems to be worth more than people, where every step reveals haste, power, and hierarchy. It is exactly in this scenario that everything begins, and what you are about to discover may surprise you more than you imagine. The distant sound of boarding calls echoes through the exclusive terminal. The impeccable floor reflects light, status, and haste. Executives walk briskly, employees speak softly, as if each word needed permission to exist in that environment. There, everything functions like an expensive clock, precise, silent, and selective. It's the kind of place where those in charge don't need to explain anything, only point. And it is in this space, laden with luxury and privilege, that a billionaire emerges as if he owns everything around him. He walks with exaggerated confidence, surrounded by assistants, cell phone in hand, impatient expression. For him, delays are unacceptable, rules are flexible, and people are disposable when they don't serve an immediate purpose. His private jet awaits him, but something isn't as it should be. A tiny detail, almost invisible to someone used to being in charge. And that's when his eyes turn to someone who, in his view, simply shouldn't be there. Seated in a discreet area of the terminal, a black woman waits in silence. Calm posture, attentive gaze, no sign of hurry. She doesn't draw attention, doesn't raise her voice, doesn't try to prove anything. To many who pass by, she seems just another person out of place, someone who doesn't fit into that environment of power and exclusivity. And perhaps you for a second thought that too. Be honest, have you ever experienced this? The billionaire observes, assesses, and in a few seconds arrives at his own conclusion. An ironic smile appears on his face. He laughs, comments something in a mocking tone, as if he were dealing with an insignificant obstacle. After all, in that world, appearance defines value, and silence is often mistaken for submission. For him, that woman is nothing more than an inconvenient delay, someone who can be ignored, pressured, or humiliated without consequences. The atmosphere around them changes. Employees exchange quick glances. Look away, pretend not to hear. No one wants to get involved. No one wants to contradict those with power, money, and influence. Meanwhile, the woman remains there, calm, as if she's seen this kind of scene before. She doesn't react, doesn't defend herself, doesn't explain. She just observes. And this silence begins to bother her more than any response could. Can you feel the tension? Because it's at this point that the story starts to tighten. Something doesn't quite fit. Why is she there? Why doesn't she show fear? Why doesn't anyone simply tell her to leave? Small details begin to emerge, almost imperceptible, but enough to plant an unsettling doubt. What if the situation isn't exactly as it seems? What if the judgment made in seconds is about to turn into a monumental mistake? Stay with me until the end of this story, because what's about to happen completely changes the game. The airport continues operating, the clocks keep ticking, the jet is still waiting for authorization, and every second brings this billionaire closer to a truth he never imagined facing in that place. Something is about to be revealed, and when it happens, no one in that terminal will forget what they witnessed. And as this scene unfolds before everyone's eyes in that exclusive terminal, it's impossible not to feel a familiar pang in your chest, because somehow this story isn't just about an airport, a private jet, or an impatient billionaire. It touches on something much closer. Who hasn't been underestimated? Who hasn't felt the weight of a gaze that judges before listening, that decides before knowing? Perhaps, as you listen to this, some memory is coming to mind now. If this topic resonates with you, if any part of this situation has happened in your life, at work, at school, in a consultation, or even within your own family, leave a comment below describing what has touched you the most so far. Sharing your experience isn't just about venting. It's about allowing others to realize they're not alone. Each comment creates an invisible bridge between different stories, but very similar feelings. And if at any point you've felt this tension growing, this silent injustice bothering you, consider liking this video. This simple gesture helps spread this message further, reaching people who might need to hear exactly this today. People who still think their worth depends on their appearance, their job title, or where they're sitting waiting. Now, if you enjoy thought-provoking stories that show real-life twists and turns, where justice doesn't shout but arrives at the right moment, subscribing to the channel is a way of saying, I want to stay here. Your subscription isn't just a number. It's what keeps this space alive, growing, and delivering more stories like this one, stories that disturb, awaken, and transform how we see others. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this type of content. Every like, every comment, every subscription is like a sign that this message matters, that talking about respect, empathy, and avoiding hasty judgments is still necessary. And while you reflect on all of this, the airport clock keeps ticking. The billionaire remains convinced he's in control of the situation. The woman stays silent, observing. The jet is still awaiting clearance, and what no one there imagines is that this silence holds a power capable of changing everything in the next instant. His laughter echoes, in a short, dry way, almost like a stamp of superiority etched into the air. It's not an open laugh, it's worse than that. It's the kind of laugh that doesn't ask for a response, that doesn't invite dialogue, that simply communicates, I'm in charge here. Some people around him notice immediately. Others pretend not to notice, because ignoring is usually safer than confronting. And there, in that space where everything revolves around status and control, the billionaire feels completely at ease. Letting his arrogance overflow, he makes a snide comment in an ironic tone, as if he were talking to someone invisible. He questions the reason for the delay, complains about the incompetence of the place, and, without looking directly at her, suggests that that woman shouldn't be there. The contempt doesn't come in explicit words, but in gestures, calculated pauses, and condescending glances. It's the kind of humiliation that doesn't need to be shouted to hurt, because it relies on the certainty that no one will object. Some employees exchange uncomfortable glances. One of them tries to approach, murmurs something, but is interrupted by a quick gesture of the hand as if brushing away an annoyance. Nearby passengers observe out of the corner of their eye, torn between curiosity and fear of getting involved. There is a silent rule in that environment. Those with power dictate the pace, and those without learn to shrink back. The billionaire knows this. He feeds off of it. And that's why he goes further. He laughs again, now with more contempt, and lets slip a judgmental phrase, implying that the woman doesn't understand how things work there. The phrase hangs in the air like a weight. It's not just about lateness or logistics. It's about social standing, about who deserves to be heard and who should remain silent. It's prejudice disguised as authority, arrogance masked as efficiency. And what's most disturbing isn't just what he says, but the certainty with which he says it. The feeling of impunity is so clear that it's physically unsettling. He doesn't expect a response. He doesn't consider the possibility of being wrong. In his mind, that scene is already resolved. He commands, the others obey. It's always been like that. It's always worked, at least until now. The woman remains seated. She doesn't cross her arms defensively, nor does she lower her head in submission. She observes. Her silence is not weakness, it's a choice, and this begins to create an almost unbearable contrast. While he grows in size and ego, she remains firm, as if anchored to something no one there can see. There is a silent dignity in the way she holds his gaze, without defiance, but also without fear. This type of scene awakens something deep within the viewer, because it's not just an isolated story, it's a reflection of decisions made every day, in meeting rooms, waiting lines, company corridors, environments where a superiority mentality imposes itself without asking permission. How many times does the abuse of power disguise itself as haste? How many times does the hidden truth hide behind a position, a surname, a bank account? The billionaire continues talking, now justifying his impatience as if he were doing the world a favor by existing. He mentions commitments, figures, tight deadlines, as if this placed him above any rule. Each word reinforces the idea that he believes he controls not only the situation, but also the people around him. It's a clear demonstration of a mindset built up over years without being questioned. And yet, something begins to stir behind the scenes, a small detail, almost imperceptible. An employee quickly walks away, speaking softly on the phone. Another avoids the billionaire's gaze and fixes his eyes on the woman with a different expression, something between respect and tension. Small cracks appear in this facade of absolute control, even if the billionaire doesn't yet realize it. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because it is precisely at this point in the journey that the transformation begins to take shape. Not noisily, not with direct confrontation, but with the slow deconstruction of an arrogant certainty. Public humiliation, when born from the abuse of power, carries within it the seed of one's own downfall. And while he believes he is at the height of control, silent decisions are being made around him. Revelations begin to align, and the truth, which until then was hidden, prepares to emerge with an impact impossible to ignore. Before moving on, write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." Her silence begins to take on a strange, almost palpable weight. It's not an empty silence, the kind born of embarrassment or fear. It's a full, dense silence that occupies space and disturbs more than any curt response. While the billionaire still seems to savor his own arrogance, perhaps waiting for an apology or a hasty reaction, she simply remains there, observing every movement around her, as if seeing beyond the surface of that scene. Seconds tick by, and something subtle begins to shift in the room. An employee, previously motionless, puts his hand to his ear and answers a short call. The conversation is quick, almost whispered, but enough to change his expression. He looks at the woman again, this time with genuine attention, not indifference. Another younger colleague nervously adjusts his name tag and takes 2 steps back, as if trying to escape the focus of that invisible tension that is growing. The billionaire doesn't notice any of this, or perhaps he does, but he doesn't interpret it correctly. For him, the woman's silence confirms his own internal narrative, that he's in control, that he can push until he gets what he wants. He rolls his eyes, lets out an impatient sigh, and makes a move to repeat the demand. But something interrupts him. Not a direct word, not a confrontation, but a detail that deviates from the usual script of power. A glance, a simple look of respect from someone who would never look that way at an ordinary person in that environment. A department head, known for his rigid demeanor, quickly crosses the billionaire's field of vision and, before moving on, slightly inclines his head toward the woman. It's almost imperceptible, but it happens, and when it does, it changes everything for those who are paying attention. Her silence continues. There's no rush to explain, no need to justify herself. It's as if she knows that every second works in her favor. There's a quiet confidence in her posture, a security that doesn't depend on anyone's validation there. This is the kind of authority that isn't imposed by force, but by certainty. An authority born from decisions made behind the scenes, from responsibilities that few know about, from a journey that doesn't need to be announced aloud. Meanwhile, small gears begin to turn beyond the billionaire's reach. A new connection is abruptly terminated. An employee walks away faster than usual. Another consults a tablet and frowns, as if he had just accessed information that completely changes the interpretation of the situation. The hidden truth begins to approach the surface, still not fully revealed. This type of moment is crucial because it exposes something profound about mindset. The mindset of those who believe that speaking louder is synonymous with power, versus the mindset of those who know that time, when well managed, reveals everything at the right moment. The woman understands this. She understands that she doesn't need to compete for space with arrogance, because reality takes care of doing that work for her. The billionaire, on the other hand, begins to feel a discomfort he can't name. Something isn't going according to plan. The environment no longer responds as before. The silence he considered a victory is beginning to turn into a threat. Even so, his pride prevents him from backing down. He remains trapped in his own image of control, unaware that important decisions are already being reconsidered around him. There's a silent transformation happening there, not external, not explicit, but internal, structural. It's a transformation of perception. For those who observe attentively, it becomes clear that that woman is not there by chance. Every detail, every restrained reaction, every respectful glance that arises around her builds a parallel narrative, invisible to those who only see the surface. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because it is precisely in this silent interval that the greatest revelations tend to be born. It is in this space between arrogance and reality that the truth finds a way to emerge. The journey of this scene is not about who talks the most, but about who maintains their position without needing to announce it. And while the billionaire still believes he is pressing time, time has already begun to press back, preparing the ground for an impact that cannot be ignored when it finally manifests. Write in the comments, "I'm on this journey too." The moment of revelation arrives without fanfare. There's no loud announcement, no lengthy explanations, no need to raise one's voice. It arrives in the most disconcerting way possible, naturally. An employee approaches, his posture different from before, his voice low, too respectful for that environment accustomed to haste. He addresses her by name, clearly and formally, and asks if the authorization can be released now. The phrase hangs in the air like a sudden change in atmosphere, and for a few seconds no one seems to understand exactly what has just happened. The billionaire frowns. He tries to follow the conversation, but something has already slipped out of his control. The word authorization shouldn't be associated with that woman, at least not within the logic he's constructed in seconds. He takes a step forward, ready to interrupt, but stops mid-movement. For the first time since entering that terminal, he hesitates. And hesitation, for someone accustomed to being in charge, is a clear sign that something is amiss. Another employee approaches, then another. The conversations intertwine, quick, technical, full of terms that don't ask for opinions, only confirmation. They talk about hangar clearance, international protocols, flight safety, decisions that don't allow for shortcuts. Everything revolves around her. And then the truth, until then hidden, begins to reveal itself effortlessly. That woman isn't there waiting for anyone's permission. She is the permission. The silence that settles in is unlike anything that came before. It's not just tense, it's awkward. The kind of silence that exposes mistakes without needing to point them out. The billionaire feels the impact even before he can rationally understand it. His posture changes. His shoulders, once rigid with confidence, slump slightly. His face loses its expression of superiority and takes on something more raw, more human, surprise mixed with fear of having gone too far. She stands calmly. Each movement seems calculated not to impress, but to maintain her composure. There is no revenge in her gaze, no pleasure in seeing the other cornered. There is only the firmness of someone who knows exactly where she stands. When she speaks, her voice is steady, without irony, without the need to retaliate. She affirms her position, briefly explains her responsibility, and makes it clear that Any takeoff depends exclusively on her decision. It is at this moment that the power reversal is complete. Everything that sustained the billionaire's arrogance crumbles silently. Money, status, haste, none of that weighs more than the real authority it wields. He realizes too late that he has humiliated the only person who decides the course of that situation. The fate of the jet, the schedule, the million-dollar commitments, everything is now in the hands of the very person he tried to diminish minutes before. The impact is profound because it's not just external, it's internal. The mindset that always worked begins to fail. He tries to adjust his speech, rehearse a justification, perhaps even a hasty apology, but nothing comes out in time. Reality doesn't wait for the ego to reorganize itself. The truth, when it appears, doesn't negotiate with previous versions. All around, the gazes change completely. Those who were previously silent out of fear now observe with quiet attention. There is no celebration, no explicit judgment. There is only the clarity that a line has been crossed and that decisions have consequences. The journey of that moment ceases to be about a delayed flight and becomes about transformation, about the impact of judging without knowing, about how true power often operates far from the spotlight. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject because this revelation isn't just a plot twist, it's a mirror. It exposes how arrogance creates dangerous blindness and how real authority, built behind the scenes, rarely needs to announce itself. The woman doesn't change her posture after the revelation because she was never playing a role. The one who needs to adjust is the one who confused appearance with truth. As the procedures unfold, she makes decisions objectively, respecting protocols that don't bow to names or fortunes. The billionaire realizes there's no room for pressure, nor for bargaining. The control he believed he had reveals itself to be an illusion sustained only by the absence of confrontation. When the confrontation finally arrives, it comes in the most disconcerting form possible: silent competence. This type of revelation leaves its mark, not only on the person exposed, but on those who observe. It's a lesson about mindset, about choices, about how each attitude builds or destroys invisible bridges. The hidden truth of that scene wasn't just in the woman's position, but in her posture, in the fact that she didn't need to humiliate to exert power, nor shout to be heard. And while the airport resumes its rhythm, with decisions being executed and orders being followed, something remains suspended in the air. A new understanding begins to form. Not all impacts are immediate, and not all transformations are completed the instant the truth is revealed. Some continue to act from within, preparing the ground for deeper reflections that still need to happen. Comment below. This makes sense to me. The way she remains after the revelation speaks volumes more than any speech could. There's no abrupt change in behavior, no need to reaffirm who she is or the position she holds. Her posture remains the same, firm, elegant, aware of her place. That's precisely what differentiates authority from ostentation. While some need to prove their power all the time, others simply exercise it naturally, without noise, without spectacle. The contrast with the billionaire becomes inevitable. His downfall is not physical nor public in the classical sense. It is moral. That man who minutes before felt untouchable now finds himself reduced to the silence he himself tried to impose. There is no reciprocal humiliation, no explicit revenge. And perhaps that is what hurts the most, because poetic justice does not come as vengeance, but as a consequence. It doesn't need to degrade him. Reality itself does that. He avoids eye contact, adjusting his jacket as if trying to rearrange something that no longer fits. The mindset that always guided his decisions failed in the face of a simple truth. Status does not define authority, appearance does not define power, and arrogance, sooner or later, always exacts its price. not as divine punishment or cruel chance, but as a direct reflection of the choices made along the way. The woman continues to resolve what needs to be resolved. Protocols are followed, decisions are made, all within the bounds of what is right. There is no rush to end the situation, nor pleasure in prolonging it. There is only responsibility. This is one of the greatest revelations of the scene. True power does not feed on the mistakes of others. It sustains itself. And when the tension begins to dissipate, something deeper lingers in the air. A kind of silent learning that doesn't depend on words. Those who witnessed that scene now carry a new reference point, a new internal parameter on how they judge, how they treat, how they decide. That woman's journey didn't begin there, at that airport. It comes from long backstage experiences, difficult choices, paths traveled far from the spotlight, and that's precisely what makes her presence so solid. This story is touching because it connects with the real lives of those who watch it. How many times has someone been ignored for seeming too simple? How many times has an opinion been dismissed because it came from the wrong person? How many decisions have been made based on appearance, tone of voice, or momentary position? The hidden truth is that everyone at some point has been on both sides of this scale, judging or being judged. There is a silent transformation that happens when we realize this, a shift in mindset that begins to question old certainties. Empathy is born precisely there, when we understand that we don't know anyone's complete story, that each person carries an invisible journey full of challenges, achievements, and lessons that cannot be quickly labeled. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because the poetic justice of this scene isn't limited to the billionaire's mistake or the woman's stance. It points to something bigger, the way we choose to look at others. The real impact of this story lies less in the plot twist and more in the reflection it leaves behind, in the silent invitation to act with respect before acting with judgment, to listen before concluding, to remember that true power doesn't need to diminish anyone to exist, while the airport continues its flow and the life of each person there goes on. Something has already changed. Not everything is resolved in a single moment, and not every lesson is completed immediately. Some continue to work internally, adjusting perceptions, repositioning values, preparing for future decisions that haven't even been made yet. And it is precisely at this point that the story continues to echo, far beyond that terminal. Comment below. This makes sense to me. If you've made it this far, it's because this story resonated with you on some level. Maybe not because of the airport, the jet, or the billionaire, but because of the message it left behind. Stories like this exist to remind us that looking more closely changes everything. And that's exactly the kind of reflection we build together here. If this content brought you value, if it made you think or feel something different, subscribing to the channel is a simple way to continue this conversation and follow other stories that follow the same line. And if you want to leave a record that you were with me until the end, write in the comments. This message was for me. Sometimes a short sentence says it all. Also, give the video a like, not as an obligation, but as a sign of the connection that has been created over time. This helps the content reach more people who might need to hear something similar today. Now, before you leave, there's a video here that complements this topic and delves even deeper into this reflection. Click and continue reading with me there.